All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on planning and delivery. I believe this is our third webinar in our series on the Stanford Inspire domains. We are thrilled to have you with us today. My name is Rachel Escobedo. I will be the moderator for today's session. And just a couple ground rules for the webinar. If you have any questions for us, you can interact with us through your questions box. We will be monitoring questions throughout the presentation. However, we will hold questions till the end. But if you do have any other questions related to audio or just connecting to the webinar itself, we can help you on the back end. But we will hold, again, those questions till the end for our speakers. And then also a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, so we will release that recording in 24 to 48 hours to those of you who attended, and of course those of you who didn't get a chance to join us today. Okay, and I'd love to introduce our speakers today. We have Brian Netherow and Lori Camposeco, both from Arizona State University. And just going to read a little bit of bio, a little bit of background information about our speakers before they take it away. So we'll start with Brian. Brian Netherow serves as a consultant for Stanford Inspire with National University. Brian previously served as executive director for Stanford Inspire at Arizona State University. During his 7+ years with the program, Brian has been involved in all phases of program development and implementation. Outside of Stanford, Brian has worked in various education roles, including classroom teacher, teacher development, and school leadership. Beyond work, Brian loves being a husband, dad, and foodie. Those of you who have been following us along in this series, you've probably met Brian already. But you haven't met Lori, and so I'm going to read to you a little bit about Lori. Lori is in her 14th year in education. Previous to working at ASU Preparatory Academy in Phoenix, she worked with the Stanford Inspire program for 3 years. During her time with Stanford Inspire, she researched and developed content on topics such as differentiation and supporting emerging bilingual students. Lori has also taught 1st, 4th, and 5th grades, as well as worked as an instructional coach in Phoenix. She spent the 2012-2013 school year teaching in Mexico City. All right, and without further ado, welcome Brian and Lori.
All right, thank you for that info and introduction, and thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Before we dive in, though, we would like to get to know a little bit about our audience. So if everyone could take a moment and answer the questions on your screen, please be sure to type your answers in the questions box so we can see what your role is and where you're from.
Awesome, thank you, Lori. Our responses are coming in. We'll give people just a little bit more time to respond. All right, looks like we have a teacher from Mesa, Arizona, teacher candidate in Arizona, school principal, Tampa, Florida, adjunct faculty in Seattle, some people from Tempe, a lot of people from Arizona joining us, and content coach, teacher candidate, let's see, Central Texas, director of educator preparation. Oh, you guys are all in good hands today. San Diego, we have high school teacher, Spanish, from Tucson, Bellevue University. Let's get a couple more. Coordinator from Washington, and retired certified teacher from Arizona. Thank you so much for your participation, guys. We're so happy and grateful that you are joining us today.
Yes, and welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us from wherever you're at. I wanted to go through what we're going to spend our time doing today. The first thing we're going to do is briefly highlight the research and feedback that informed the development of all 5 of our domains, more specifically of the planning and delivery domain. We'll also highlight and review specific parts of different module resource bundles and coaching guides in order to point out key features. And just a side note, any of the documents that we pull up are available on the Sanford Inspire website. And the third thing we'll do is spend time highlighting strategies that teachers and educators can put into practice fast. More specifically, what these strategies are and how they help. So first, we'll take a look at the Sanford Inspire origin story. We landed at 5 domains, and the research that informed these domains came from the in-task standards, Marzano and Danielson's work, the TAP rubric, as well as teaching as leadership. So what the program did in its earlier days was use feedback based on the needs and demands at districts and schools and created a crosswalk. And the result of that crosswalk is the Sanford Inspire framework. So as I said, we landed at 5 domains. The first one is the learning environment domain, planning and delivery, which is where we'll be spending our time today, the motivation domain, student growth and achievement, and then professional practices. So as you can see, we have our 5 domains, and then within those 5 domains, we have 18 topics. The first, we're going to look at the planning and delivery domain today. This is actually our largest domain. It has 7 topics and a total of 34 modules. Today, we're going to highlight resources and strategies from the differentiation topic, the emerging bilingual or English language learners topic, as well as the elements of delivery topic. So planning and delivery is unique not only because of its size, but at this point, when we were creating and working in this domain, we began to consult with local subject matter experts. And we couldn't have accomplished what we did without them. They helped guide and suggest seminal research to review. They reviewed content for us, and they also provided a lot of the interview footage that you see in our modules. So we're going to the first topic we'll take a look at is differentiation. And before we dive into that, I wanted to do a quick poll to see, just get a feel what the first word that comes to mind is when you see or hear differentiation. So if you could type your answer in the questions, we'll take a look.
Great, thank you, Lori. Yes, we'll give you all maybe about a minute or so to answer this question on the screen. Okay, we have some responses coming in. We see accommodations, meeting every child's needs, opportunity, needs, different, meets diverse needs of all learners, addressing individual needs of students, diversity, individualized, providing students various methods to get knowledge or content to prove that they know the content, personalizing, and we'll get one more. All right, and then another, taking in consideration every student's needs in our courses and helping satisfy them. All right, thank you so much for your responses, everybody.
Great. So what we know about differentiation is that it is an incredibly complex topic, especially when we think about meeting the needs of all students. It can feel overwhelming for teachers who undertake differentiation to feel that they are doing it well. And it should also be something that looks differently in each classroom. So let's take a look at the differentiation modules that are in the topic. It contains 10 modules. The 7 that you see listed focus on translating research and then applying it into the classroom. We're going to spend time today highlighting content from this group of modules. The basics of differentiation, which is the first one you notice at the top, provides a broad overview of what differentiation is, as well as what it isn't. It also provides educators with some key terms that will help establish vocabulary needed. And we recommend highly that any educator new to differentiation goes through this module first. Next, if I could draw your attention to the following 3 modules, they're all entitled, or they begin with preparing to differentiate. These modules help teachers to learn about student attributes such as interest, learner profile, and readiness before they begin to enact or try a strategy in their classroom. They can take these 3 modules really focus on getting to know the students you have in front of you and gathering and organizing information. Next, educators are meant to go through the modules that begin with differentiation strategy, and you'll see 3 listed. There's respectful tasks, student choice, and performance tasks. So in these modules, teachers are meant to use information learned from the preparing to differentiate modules in order to inform specific differentiation strategies. In addition to the 7 differentiation modules, there are also 3 modules that teach what an specific learning disability or SLD is and how to modify instruction or differentiate for students who have a diagnosis. Supporting students with ADHD outlines how ADHD can affect students. It provides some really easy to implement strategies to support students who have attention and focus differences. And then something really unique about the supporting students with ADHD module is that in the resource bundle, there is a document that addresses the conflicting research that surrounds the topic of ADHD. So what I'd like to do next is highlight a resource that is available on any of the resource documents that come along with all of the differentiation modules. And the goal of the resource is to help differentiation to feel accessible and doable for teachers. I think that was the biggest goal when we created these 7 modules. What the matrix does is it provides a really broad overview of how teachers can differentiate by content, process, and or product, as well as according to student readiness, interest, or learner profile. This matrix was highly informed by Dr. Carol Ann Tomlinson's work. We used this matrix as the basis to inform the 6 corresponding preparing to differentiate the 3 preparing to differentiate modules, and then the 3 differentiation strategies. The idea is that users will learn about student attributes before attempting to enact a strategy. So let's take a moment to watch a clip from one of our subject matter experts, Dr. Kathleen Puckett. Dr. Puckett was kind enough to collaborate with us on the differentiation modules by offering her expertise in reviewing module content and providing video footage for some of the modules. In this clip, she introduces the module and explains how it will provide a starting point to begin differentiating instruction for all students.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Puckett, and I'm an Associate Professor of Special Education at Arizona State University. This is the Basics of Differentiation module, and in this module you will learn techniques and mindsets for differentiating instruction for all students so that all students have access to the curriculum. Teachers quickly learn that no 2 students are exactly alike. And that does not mean that you have to have separate lesson plans for students. And this module will show you or introduce to you ways that you can accommodate all students for their special needs. We hope that you enjoy this module and that you're able to use these concepts in your classroom.
Great. So as you can see, the value that our subject matter experts bring, what I'd like to do next is take a closer look at a module resource from a module entitled Preparing to Differentiate Student Interest. So this module is really a unique spin on student interest because it goes above and beyond giving a survey. We found that something that a lot of educators do is give a great survey that they put a lot of thought and time into in the beginning of the year, and then it often gets filed away and not really used, when it's actually the information that's on them is a great starting point to begin differentiating instruction for students. So I'm going to take a second and pull that up so I can walk you through it. Here we go. So what we did is we used research-based best practices to learn about what to do with the information learned from a student interest survey, and broke it down into 3 simple steps. So the first step is to learn about students. You can do it using a general questionnaire or something more content specific, depending on your setting. The second step we identified was to organize this information. So instead of putting it in a file folder and putting it away, we looked at some different ways, electronically or by paper, to organize that information based on your needs, whether it was general or content specific information. And then the third thing, which is really unique, the third step, is to identify trends in the data. So even though it is a pretty informal survey, there will be trends that surface. So this is a way for you to identify trends, whether it's common interests, unique interests, or themes within the content. Something else we did on the third page is provide categorized questions that might help a teacher or an educator to put together their first student interest survey. And here is the matrix I showed you at the beginning. Again, this is on every resource in the differentiation module, so teachers can refer to it as needed. So the module and resource help bring authenticity to learning about, organizing, and using student interest in order to begin differentiating in the classroom. And again, I think it does a really great job of helping differentiation to feel accessible for teachers and not so far away. So next, I'd like to switch gears from differentiation to another topic, which is emerging bilingual students, or also known as English language learners. So according to research, culturally and linguistically diverse students now represent over half of our pre-K through 12 student population. We knew this when we did the research for this module, but NPR actually just did a story on it a couple of weeks ago. So within the English language learners topic, there are 5 modules. This was another topic area where we collaborated heavily with local subject matter experts. We were fortunate to partner up with additional college faculty, and again, they helped us inform the content of the modules, and they collaborated on the design. Many of our emerging bilingual students often have negative experiences in school due to how the education system views students learning a language other than English. These students are often left to feel that they have to leave a part of who they are at home each day in order to learn to speak English at an often unrealistic rate. It's a very unique and special group of modules for many reasons. First, they were all created with the mindset that emerging bilingual students are an incredible asset to our pre-K through 12 and even college school systems because of the rich language and cultural experiences they bring with them. Secondly, this group of modules introduces teachers to mindsets that are critical to ensuring that students feel welcome and accepted at school. And in addition, the research used to inform these modules will help challenge the mainstream. Educators are forced to think really deeply about the instructional practices that they do or do not that honor culturally and linguistically diverse students. Finally, the modules provide teachers with actionable research-based strategies to support not only academic and social language development, but more importantly, strategies that honor our cultural and linguistically diverse students' native languages and experiences. And I wanted to highlight the key research that informed these 5 important modules. excuse me, everyone listed here, these names are found throughout the module resources. Some of them you'll see on 1 or 2, some of them you'll see on all 5. So if you're ever interested in pursuing and reading more, these are the guys you would want to go to. So what I wanted to do next is show you a video clip that highlights a module called Valuing Bilingualism, which, although we don't typically recommend an order in which to do modules, similar to the basics to differentiation, valuing bilingualism might be a good place for teachers, especially new teachers, to start. This video highlights Dr. Vic Diaz explaining how an education system that focuses on an English-only model forces students to feel devalued while at school. So we'll take a second and watch that.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hernandez, and I'm a clinical assistant professor at Arizona State University. I'm here today to talk to you about a module called Valuing Bilingualism. It is well known that white students are no longer the majority in K-12 public schools. In fact, the fastest growing segment of K-12 public school students are those who are labeled as emerging bilingual. In spite of this increased linguistic diversity, many teachers report not knowing how to respond to their culturally and linguistically diverse learners. In this module, you will learn about local, state, and federal policies that either promote bilingualism or restrict it. Regardless of whether you are in a bilingual state or a language restrictive state, you will learn how to support your learners in using all of their linguistic resources to be successful in their academic tasks. When teachers learn to use language more resourcefully, it makes teaching and learning efficient. Most importantly, it helps to develop positive academic identities for all of your learners.
So as you can see, the module seeks to explain the importance of valuing bilingualism in the classroom, school, and it also discusses the impacts it can have in the community. So what I'd like to do is highlight the resource as well as the coaching guide from this module, so you can see what it helps prepare teachers to do. So we'll first take a look at the module resource. Let me get the view set up. I apologize. So we'll just take a look at it as is. So the first page on the left here, it lists out 4 concrete actions that are things teachers can start doing right away. And then it explains what the action is, as well as providing the research that justifies how the action will help students feel valued and welcomed at school. It's a pretty simple yet powerful document for teachers to use to get going to see the benefits of valuing bilingualism in their classroom. And the second document is the coaching guide. So if you are an administrator, an instructional coach, anyone who supports teachers in any way, this gives you an idea. It highlights key takeaways, and it also provides a description of what a classroom that values language and cultural experience might look and sound like down in the skill and action section. So this is just a tool to help support teachers when they get going in the classroom. So we're going to switch topics, and from our emerging bilinguals or English language learner topic and head into elements of delivery. This is the third and final topic that we're going to highlight today. Elements of delivery contains 11 modules and is unique because it has 3 groups of modules that help prepare teachers and educators to enact powerful strategies. So we have our 3 groups. One focuses on memory retention, the second focuses on cooperative learning, and the third focuses on planning and delivering questions. We also have 4 modules that are more standalone. on preparing for student discussions, modeling, annotation, and then combating cognitive overload. So we're going to highlight the developing behaviors for cooperative learning module. A common mistake in cooperative learning is often that teachers group students and assume that they know how to cooperate, and we quickly find out or learn that this isn't often the case. And this isn't necessarily just at an elementary level, but at middle, high school, and college as well. Developing behaviors or pro-social behaviors for cooperative learning is unique because it breaks down behaviors necessary in order for cooperative learning to occur. So what we're going to do is watch a clip of Dr. Wendy Farr, a clinical associate professor, explain how this module impacted her teaching experiences at the university level. She also explains how developing behaviors for cooperative learning is applicable across elementary, middle, high school, and college settings.
If you can't manage their behavior, you're not going to be able to put them in cooperative learning groups and develop their engagement that way. I am Dr. Wendy Farr. I'm the director of a Teacher Quality Partnership Grant from the U.S. Department of Education here at Arizona State University, and I'm also a clinical associate professor here. I took the module to work with the undergraduate students here at the university. So I used some of the grouping strategies and the things that I learned in the module in that particular introduction class that I taught. In the developing behaviors for cooperative learning module, I learned a lot about grouping students and a lot of reminders of things that I've forgotten since I left the K-12 classroom. Just looking at the struggling students and grouping students accordingly, like really individualizing what I'm actually doing with these students in the classroom. And it could be for any range of students, whether it be college or K-12, special ed, gifted. The techniques would work with any of the students that you'd come across. I think the module took me about 45 minutes. So I did it at night one day. And I talked to the students in the morning about the module itself. And it modeled that I like to learn too and do extra things. And then it was giving them the strategies that they could use later too. And I think I mentioned before that I haven't been in the classroom in a while, so it helped sort of remind me of the things that I used to do or the things that I'm not doing now and my planning going forward.
So as you can see, developing behaviors or pro-social behaviors for cooperative learning is applicable across pre-K up into college. And the last resource I'd like to show you is the resource bundle that accompanies this module. And it seems like my computer is frozen, so we'll give it just a second.
Lori, if we can't get it up, let's just move on. Oh, hopefully you're able to.
Did it come up? Let me try and get it. We'll try one more time. It looks like, okay. Well, I can verbally highlight the resource for you. What it does is it highlights 5 behaviors that are supported by research, all of which are required for effective cooperative learning. It explains how to teach each behavior using 3 steps. And it also provides examples of what each behavior should look and sound like. So again, this is something that educators can easily implement to foster certain behaviors. So they can start working on one behavior, and then once students are successful with that, they can begin to layer them in. So this concludes my portion of today's webinar. I'm going to hand the reins over to Brian to share his insights on module uses and implementation.
Hello, it's good to be with you all today. I'm just excited to talk with you and always excited to hear from Lori and learn along with her. I don't get the chance to do it every day like I used to when we worked together, and so it's a real treat for me to be able to hear from her and learn from her wisdom. So thank you, Lori, for all that information. And I wanted to spend a few minutes now talking about module implementation, specifically with modules in the planning and delivery domain. So I know you just heard a little bit about implementation from Dr. Farr in the video we showed. She mentioned some of the strategies that she modeled for her teacher candidates that they could in turn model with with the K-12 students that they serve. So I think that's a really great segue into implementation, and I wanted to share some more ideas. But before getting into specifics, I wanted to highlight some overview recommendations that we have for any module implementation, including those in planning and delivery. So our framework for implementation is shown here on the screen, and it's our CARE implementation model. And CARE is basically our recommendation for any use case with Sanford Inspire on-demand modules, regardless of the environment, regardless of the population, the size of the user group. We recommend this model in all situations. So 4 different steps. I'll walk you through it quickly. The first step is complete. So anyone who's using a module, regardless of the scenario, needs to first complete that module. And that sounds a little bit obvious, but I think sometimes people get really excited to jump into the resources or take a tool and run with it. And we think it's really important that everyone has a consistent foundation and a consistent understanding of the research and the background knowledge that's related to the topic, so that the resources and the tools that come with the module can be used with that foundation already in place. And sometimes you can get into sticky situations if you just rush to the implementation without understanding the background knowledge first. So step 1 is complete the module. Step 2 is apply strategies from that module into your setting. Everyone's setting is different. Everyone's environment is different. Context matters, and it's a really important step to take something from the module and bring it into your local context and put it into practice. The third step is equally important, and that is to refine your implementation. So we do not expect modules to be this magic bullet, quick fix. You do a module, you look at the tool, and all of a sudden you're teacher of the year the next day. That's just completely unrealistic and not how we see development happening. And so refine is a really important step to continue to tweak those applications that you're putting into practice in your local context. So this looks like asking questions, making mistakes, getting feedback, talking with colleagues, supervisors, and others to really edit and tweak your application to make it even stronger and more successful for your students. And then the final step isn't so much a step as the result of the first 3 steps. So elevate, you don't necessarily do something to elevate, but by completing modules, applying strategies in your context, and refining those applications to make them even more impactful, you're elevating yourself as an educator. You're improving your skills, you're improving the impact you have on young people, and you're also elevating the learning experiences that your students are having when they're with you. And so elevate is the final step, but I put that in quotes because it's more of a result than an action item. And that's kind of the process we recommend for any module. And on the next slide, we'll sort of show you the broad applicability that this model can fit within. So when you're using modules, including those in planning and delivery, this can work with individual teachers on a one-on-one basis. This can work with small groups of teachers, like a grade level team or a cohort of teachers, or a group of teachers that all teach the same content area. Or this could work with an entire faculty. So modules can be used with an entire group of teachers that are across a variety of different settings as well. So that just shows the broad applicability. And so the next slide, we'll get into more specifics about the planning and delivery modules. So there's a few different things we've seen specific to the planning and delivery modules, and we'll highlight those on the next slide here. So we talk a little bit about higher ed, a little bit about K-12, because modules are designed to be used in both of those environments. And so we'll touch on each. As far as higher education, one of the things that you might find not surprising, but maybe you'll see this as interesting, I kind of did. This was our first domain to be robustly developed. So we now have 80 plus modules, 5 different domains, but planning and delivery was really our first domain to robustly develop. It's also our largest domain. And the reason for that is because when we did research to decide which areas we wanted to focus on, what are the areas of need specifically for new and novice educators, this was overwhelmingly the #1 requested area. And when I say this, I mean the topics that we cover inside planning and delivery. And so for that reason, this was really the first domain to be robustly developed. And for a while, this was the only domain that we had a lot of modules in, because of how much feedback we were getting about the need for these topics to be covered. And as far as implementation goes, what we saw happen in the higher ed environment, and this kind of relates to what Dr. Farr was talking about, is we saw a lot of our planning and delivery modules in particular being used as personalized development tools for individual teachers. So in our higher education context at Arizona State University, all of our pre-service teachers had formal observations throughout the academic year, and they had 4 of those formal observations. And at the end of each observation, there was an area of refinement identified as sort of a focus area for the next 8 weeks or so. And each area of refinement was then linked to action items. And so what we saw specifically with the planning and delivery modules was that they were very commonly identified as the next step for an area of refinement based on a teacher observation. So essentially, a faculty member goes into the classroom, observes the teacher, identifies an area of need, and then attaches an aligned module to that area of need as a next step. And it was very common that planning and delivery was the identified area of need. Again, that sort of is supported by the fact that so many people told us this is what teachers need support on. And so it was really valuable for us to be able to provide that support in a way that could be used in a personalized approach. So each observation may not point to the exact same module, and it would point to whichever one made the most sense for that teacher. That same strategy could be used with modules outside of the planning and delivery domain. The reason I'm sharing it here is because this was the domain where that strategy was really developed, and this was the domain that strategy was really implemented with first. On the K-12 side, there's a couple different strategies and success stories that I wanted to point out. One of the things that was really interesting about the planning and delivery modules was that we were often covering topics that were very new to education or had a new spin on them than what had previously been accepted as the norm. And so specifically, we have a module in planning and delivery on close reading. We have a module on homework and what does research say about homework. And then we have an entire topic on emerging bilinguals with our English language learners topic. And in the K-12 environment, these modules from our planning and delivery domain were very often used with teachers to provide research-based, updated, relevant perspectives on these topics that were either brand new to education or had been in education for a while but have been evolving as time goes on. And so our modules were very helpful in consistently covering these topics that are being modernized and updated as time goes on. Another K-12 strategy I wanted to point out was with the Paradise Valley Unified School District. In the Paradise Valley School District, they only had they didn't even have 5. They had less than 5 coaches across their entire district. This is a large district. It's a unified district. And so less than 5 coaches is not a lot of capacity to support an entire district of teachers. And so what they did specifically with the planning and delivery modules, they would observe classrooms and then assign modules as an action item based on the classroom observations. This is very similar to the strategy I mentioned in the higher ed example, but is more based on a K-12 implementation. Again, not exclusive to planning and delivery. This could be done with other modules and other domains as well. But what we saw is planning and delivery was a very common theme, especially for new and novice teachers, to make those quick adjustments to improve their practice the very next day. And they saw some great gains by applying these modules to teachers based on the experiences that were observed in the classroom. One other thing I wanted to point out as far as use goes is sort of an interesting interesting experience that we had. We didn't necessarily design this to happen, but it did happen. So I wanted to call it out. At the very bottom of the screen, you'll see the gray band that says both environments, special education teachers gravitating towards these modules. We don't design any one module for a set group of teachers as far as grade level goes or as far as content goes. All of our modules are designed for any grade level, any content area. But one of the things we observed that was really interesting was special education teachers in particular gravitated towards planning and delivery modules, specifically the modules in the differentiation topic and the modules in the English language learners topic. And that was kind of an interesting experience for us to see these topics as really valuable in the special education group of teachers in particular. So to be clear, these modules were not designed specifically for special education teachers, and I'm not saying these are the only modules special education teachers should be viewing. I'm also not saying teachers who do not serve special education students should avoid these modules. I'm not saying that either, but it was just an interesting observation that we saw on the implementation side was that special education teachers really gravitated towards these two topics in the planning and delivery domain. And so I wanted to call that out here. Those are some implementation highlights related to planning and delivery. And on the next slide, we'll kind of put a bow on things before we hear from you and answer your questions. Today we covered a lot of information, and to highlight where we've been, we hope that you feel like you have a better understanding of the research and development that goes into the planning and delivery domain. We also hope you're walking away with some strategies and understanding of what could you actually do in your environment with these particular modules. And then finally, how does this domain support teacher preparation programs for those that are in the higher ed environment rather than the K-12 environment. So those were our goals for today. And I feel really good that we've reached those, and hopefully you're walking away feeling confident in those three areas. And at this time, we will turn it over to you all to hit us with your questions and give more specific information around what you're thinking about, what you're interested in, where you want to go with this information next. So I know Veronica's got them lined up, so go ahead and grill us. Not Veronica, Rachel, sorry.
No, it's okay. Actually, it's good to mention Veronica. She's our program manager, and she would be your best contact for Stanford Inspire in terms of if you're interested in learning more about our modules, what we do, what we offer as a program. She would be your contact, and I'll share her information with you in at the end. So yes, like Brian said, now is the opportunity to ask our speakers any questions. I will start us off with some that we've already received. First question is, can I get certifications for completing the modules?
Great question. Yes, is the short answer. Each module comes with its own certification. That is true of planning and delivery modules. That is also true of every other module in the framework. To get the certificate, you need to complete the entire module and earn a 100% on the assessment. Anytime you do that for a module, you will automatically have your certificate generated, and it will generate inside the platform and will be stored in the platform itself. So all of that is automated as long as you complete the entire module and earn 100% on the assessment.
Great. And how do they receive those certificates?
So they'll be automatically generated. So at the end of a module, there's an assessment in each module. As soon as you complete that assessment with 100%, you'll be taken to a conclusion page where you are given your certificate and you can access it there. You can also access it on your profile when you sign into your account and view the modules that you have signed up for. Any module for which you have earned a certificate, you'll be able to access the certificate directly from your profile page as well as at the end of the module once you pass with 100%.
Perfect. Someone's asking, is there a way that we can go back and listen again to the module after you've completed it, I'm assuming?
Yes, you can watch a module as many times as you want. So you can make modules your new Netflix binge and just go module crazy and rewatch it as many times as you want. They don't expire. they don't disappear. Excuse me. And so once you finish a module, we encourage you to make that content useful in whatever way that makes sense to you. So for some folks, that's taking the resources, the coaching guide, and implementing those tools. For some folks, it's revisiting portions of the module that they want to check out. So absolutely, once you finish a module, it doesn't expire, it doesn't disappear. You can continue to rewatch as often as you'd like.
Nice. And are these modules free for anyone to use?
They are free. There is no charge to any module. There's no charge for an account. There's no charge for the certificate. There's no catch along the way where we're going to hit you with a bill. It's 100% free from start to finish for anyone that has an internet connection and an email address. And that's really important to us. Our vision is to impact young people in schools right now through the amazing teachers that serve them every day. And we want that to be as easy as possible. And so for that reason, there are no costs, there's no barriers to enter, there's no limitations or restrictions. As soon as you create your account, which is free, you have 100% complete access to every single module at any time you want, also for free, and can earn as many certificates as you'd like, also for free.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Another one's asking, can you share what happens when a student does not pass the first time with 100%? Can they take the test again?
So can they take the test again? Yes. What happens is, and Lori, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what happens is they will get feedback on the assessment. So every assessment is filled with pretty thorough and extensive feedback, whether you get the answers correct or incorrect. And so for all the answers you get correct, you'll get feedback as to why that is correct. For all the answers you get incorrect, you'll get feedback as to why that is incorrect. We'll encourage you to revisit portions of the module, and then when you are ready to attempt that assessment again, you reattempt that assessment and try for the 100% then.
All right, thank you. Another question is, how do I get buy-in from my principal if I'm interested in bringing these modules to my school?
That's a really good question. Lori, I'll share my knee-jerk thoughts, but then would welcome your thoughts too, because I think that's a really great question. So when we've seen implementation happen, it's gone through a variety of different paths. Sometimes it starts at the district level, sometimes it starts at the school leader level, sometimes it starts at the individual teacher level. My recommendation, if you are a teacher, you're wanting to scale this at your school to get it used across the entire school, my recommendation would be to go through at least one module yourself, experience the module as a user, and see what you take away from it. How do you use the tools? How do you implement the strategies? What is it that you're getting out of the module yourself? And after you do that with at least one module and put some strategies into practice in your classroom and really become a living example of how modules are helping you get better, my recommendation would be to then take that experience to your principal and not just say, hey, there's a cool website, sanfordinspire.org, you need to go check it out, principal, but instead present your case studies showing there's this incredible resource, here's a little bit about it, and here's how I've gotten value out of it myself. Here's what steps I took to become a better educator with this resource. And here's how I think it could be used with other educators on our campus. I don't think that's going to guarantee your principal is going to just adopt it immediately, but I think by becoming a living example of how Sanford Inspire works, it'll be more compelling to your administrator to use it across other teachers. The other thing I would say is utilize the resources that we have. So today in the webinar, Lori walked you through videos and coaching guides and resources and tons of different tools that are very, very valuable and already created for you. And so as you're describing Sanford Inspire to your administrator and sharing your experience, my recommendation would be to use those tools and use those videos to really bring Sanford Inspire to life instead of trying to create all of that collateral yourself.
That was an awesome explanation, Brian. I think the only thing I can think to add on would be to help sell the idea to your principal. Maybe think about the module or modules that you go through and then bring to life in your classroom. If they can align to a need, whether it's a classroom need or a school or district level need, to show that they can help meet needs as well as enrich educator professional development. And then a big point is that everything, as Brian mentioned, is free too. So that would be all I could think to add onto your answer, Brian.
That's a great call out.
Awesome, thank you so much. We had a question asking, can teachers use the certificates for continuing education credit?
Good question. Yes, they can. The caveat to that is that it must be approved by whoever your governing body is. So I can share, in the state of Arizona, the Department of Education has deferred that decision to individual districts. So the Department of Education at the state level does not dictate what does and does not count towards recertification. That power is given to the individual districts. In Arizona, where most of our initial efforts were focused, we never had a district deny a Sanford certificate from counting towards recertification. But outside of Arizona, I can't speak to other state Department of Ed and how departments of education and how they operate, but I know in Arizona it was up to individual districts, and my understanding is they absolutely can count towards recertification as long as the governing body or whoever decides what counts or doesn't count honors them. But really what sold it in Arizona was the fact that these are built at a university, they're research based, they're completely high quality and freely available, and so those benefits really made them a valuable tool to count towards recertification.
Great, thank you so much, Brian. All right, another question, and this question kind of puts you guys on the spot, but I'm gonna throw it your way anyways. See what your response is. So who is the best current researcher that promotes valuing bilingualism that could persuade administrators of this perspective?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm going back through the slides. I'm trying to find one with all the research listed. Can you read the question one more so I can narrow the focus?
Yes. Who is the best current researcher that promotes valuing bilingualism and could persuade administrators of this perspective?
Well, I would say so kind of two answers. I think all of the research that was put in there is really powerful. And within the Valuing Bilingualism module, there is a video of an educator who speaks pretty powerfully to how students feel walking into school when they know a big piece of who they are isn't valued. And I think if that video doesn't get you thinking about your own mindsets towards language, I don't know what would. As far as recent research, Wheeler and Swords, they're the first one on the list in the slide, and their work heavily influenced the module on contrastive analysis, because what their work essentially does is and the module contrastive analysis is it helps educators level the playing field, where instead of having English being framed as the better than, you have to learn this language, it parallels languages. So it works. They have really specific strategies where you're with your students alongside them, again, not like up in front of them, you're working with them to analyze differences between languages instead of this is how you say it in English. So that's pretty powerful. Django Paris's work is impactful, and then Viegas and Lucas, I would say. I would put those as the top three that I would start at. One that's not listed in value, or it's not listed on the slide, but I think it's part of valuing bilingualism, and then part of the culturally responsive pedagogy modules is Geneva Gay's work too.
Perfect, thank you. And again, Lori, right, those names, most of those names can be found on the slide that you shared with us earlier.
Yes, all three of them, with the exception of Geneva Gay, can be found on the slide. Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, everyone, we are almost at the hour. Oh goodness, we have, okay, one more question, and then we're gonna put the webinar to a close. If teachers will just view the modules and gain access to the certificates themselves, what is the role of a presenter of this information to teachers? Is the role of university level professors working with K-12 teachers just to offer the programs and coordinate the completion of the certificates?
That's a great question. I'd say it varies a little bit from environment to environment. So there are some users, and some of them might be on the webinar right now, who are just individual teachers who seek this out or hear about it from a friend, and they're using it on their own to learn new skills, to get new ideas, and to become a better educator, completely independent of their school. And that's amazing. That is totally fine, and we are happy that we're able to support those teachers through modules. I would say the most common implementation involves some other stakeholder, whether that's a principal, a coach, a mentor, a professional development director, someone who is involved with the development beyond the teacher, him or herself. And typically the role of that person with modules is more of the support, the question asker, the like challenger, rather than the content deliverer. So what's amazing about the modules is it takes the burden of having to find really high quality content off of that principal, coach, professional development director, because the module can do that for you. But through things like the coaching guide and some of the other resources that are included with modules, they then become more the role of mentor, support, rather than deliverer of content. So what we've seen in our most successful partners is that they are asking questions of the teachers, they're challenging them on how they can improve their pedagogy, and they're going in and observing and seeing how the teacher is growing, rather than being the deliverer of content, because the module can do that for them. So it's not necessary that they must do that with teachers, but in our most successful partners, the additional staff that I've mentioned serve more as a support coach role rather than the content deliverer.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. And thank you so much again to our speakers, Brian and Lori. Wonderful job today. Wonderful presentation on our awesome Inspire modules. Again, there's a lot of modules to explore, and we really, really encourage you all to go into our website, register, and dive in right away. It's very flexible. It's easy to search for modules, easy to search for content that you're looking for. Again, today was all focused on planning and delivery, and all the modules that fall underneath that domain, but there are many other domains, and we're covering all those domains in this webinar series. And yeah, so again, highly encourage you to dive in, get started right away, because they are really well designed, and a lot of, like Lori and Brian has shared with us today, a lot of effort and time and research has been put into building them. So you can definitely feel confident that you're getting very good quality material. Some people are asking if this webinar is being recorded. Yes, this webinar is being recorded, and we will post it and share it with you all in about 24 to 48 hours. And we don't share the slides, but we do share the recording, so you'll be able to see all the slides. You can take screenshots of them and share them, that's fine, but we just only share the recording. Brian and Lori, are there any last words you'd like to share for our audience?
Thank you for joining us. Lori, thank you for all your wisdom and information. And to the audience, thanks for being with us. Great to be with you, and hope you continue to use Inspire modules to give your students the inspirational learning experiences they deserve.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you to everyone for taking time out of your busy day, and we appreciate you being with us.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And if you have a second to take our survey, it's going to launch right when this webinar closes. We truly appreciate your feedback. We truly read all your comments and take them all into consideration. It helps us build better webinars for you in the future. And with that, I'll let you all go. Stay tuned for our next webinar in November. Take care, everybody.